We are going to call our committee to order. Let's take roll. Justin? Page?
Here.
Sorry, it's a hard question.
I'm going to zoom in a second.
I was just waiting for
Lee Todd, Lou Young is here, Harper Blake, and joining us, Harold McKinney. All right, today we are excited to have an update on the Read to Succeed with our KBE Chief Academic Officer, Mickey Ray Marinelli. Did I say that right? And Director of Early Literacy, Christy Biggerstaff. So thank you for being here, ladies. You're probably exhausted from that wonderful conference still, but we are happy to hear an update.
Thank you all so much, and I appreciate especially the kind words that you share about the conference and your ability to be there, supporting the work along the way. It's been about a year since we were able to report on our implementation of Read to Succeed, and just so grateful for Christy's leadership and the work of the Division of Early Literacy in not only implementing the legislation, but more importantly, building relationship and making investments with districts across the state. So on the next slide, you'll see I wanted to share just briefly the legal basis for this. So Read to Succeed charged us with developing teacher academies, and so that's where we are plugging in most explicitly to the letters professional learning, but we were also charged with establishing a coaching model. And that is no small work. It has been extensive, and I'm very excited for you to hear from Christy about where we are with that coaching model. And all of this work is funded through the Read to Succeed Fund, and so we receive $11 million per year, not only to support the academies, but also our staffing for the coaching model and the placement of those school-based coaches. I'm going to turn it over to Christy to talk about the broad spectrum of the work.
So on the next slide, you'll see kind of this big, beautiful umbrella of the Kentucky Read to Succeed, and that encompasses all of the different aspects and initiatives of the work of the Division of Early Literacy. On the left-hand part of your screen, that is mainly the professional learning. So we knew that we had to empower our leaders, our educators with the knowledge that they needed in order to be successful. So we're going to talk about each of those parts a little later and go into kind of depth with them, but you can see the letters learning. We have an elementary and secondary science reading course that we also give districts. We have an entire network that we lovingly call Kentucky Ellen. Dale is kind of the male version, that's the Division of Early Literacy, and then we have Kentucky Ellen, who is our network opportunity. And then, of course, as you heard earlier about the Kentucky Reads to Succeed conference. On the right-hand part of the screen, that's more about the coaching model that we'll dig into in just a few minutes, the direct support that we give districts and schools, and then the tools that we have created in order to help schools and districts implement this work. But we know that, again, we had to start with the professional learning to kind of get that momentum and movement within our districts and schools to get them the knowledge they needed in order to help.
So on the next slide, you'll see the makeup of the Division of Early Literacy team. When we met with you about a year ago, we did not have this many staff members supporting the work, and so it's very exciting. We do have Christy, who is serving as our Director of Early Literacy. We now have 2 assistant directors that support her with different projects. We have 5 state regional literacy directors, and they are sort of the direct support to our 36 state literacy coaching specialists, and those are school-based. So they don't work through the district office, they are placed in schools with greatest need. And then we also have 8 regional principal support leaders. And I am very excited about that position specifically, and Christy will speak to it a bit more later, but you know, there is no way to overstate the significance and importance of a building administrator in terms of scaling and sustaining this work. And so these regional principal support leaders are really intended to pour into the administrators within our Kentucky Ellen network, but also within our partner schools and districts as well.
On the next slide, you'll see our great state, and those are different touch points that the Division of Early Literacy had last year So I know it's too small, it's too small and kind of fuzzy, but I will tell you that the orange is kind of our, where we have coaches within our districts. The green is the regional district support. This is where directors have like direct professional learning with our districts. They have supported them more than just with our tools and resources. The pink color is Kentucky Ellen, and then you get into a mixture of colors where some of our districts are involved in multiple initiatives, whether that be they have a coach and they're involved with the Kentucky Ellen Network, or they might have a coach and they've had regional direct support from our directors. So very, very happy that we had last year alone over 120 districts that we were able to support in the work of the Division of Early Literacy. And I will say though, being the competitive and driven person that I am, I want every single one of those white counties to be touched in some way with our Division of Early Literacy. I think already we have made concentrated efforts, and we'll talk about it in just a few minutes, with Kentucky Ellen to have more of our western states involved in that network, and then our eastern part of the state involved in that network. So I do know that if we get to come before the board next year, you're going to see a map that has even more colors, and that makes me very proud. But this is last year's effort. We even have more partnership schools within our coaching model that we'll be able to shade in for next year as well. So very excited to be able to stretch from the far west part of our state to the far east and northern and southern part of our state to help support districts and schools who are reaching out and who want it and who need it, and thrilled to have a division of people that are willing and passionate to do that and are able to do so, and with the whole outlook of wanting to add more and more staff to this effort.
Let me ask you a question. Why are the white ones white?
The white ones are white because they're not involved in, they don't have a coach, a literacy coach.
Why is it? Is that by their choice, or you don't have the resources to do it, or?
Well, no, both, maybe, I would say. So, you know, our goal is to build out our literacy coaching model to have 80 coaches. So right now, we just have around 33 partnership schools. So we want to add more because our schools need that. And then the Kentucky Ellen Network, we had 33 districts participating last year. We've invited about 30 more. So we're hoping that those 30 will take up that invitation. Yeah.
But this doesn't include letters participation.
No.
So some of those white districts do have folks participating in the letters professional learning, but this specifically is how our coaching participates. Yeah. All of those would be shaded in pretty much if you added in a letters participation. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide and dig deeper into that coaching model. So as I said, we have 33 current partnership schools. Last year was the first year that we placed coaches within schools. So it was their first year of school within their partnership schools. We call them partnership schools because that's truly what it is. It's a partnership. They are not federally mandated to work with us. We literally have to pick up the phone and say, hey superintendent, my name is Christy Biggerstaff. I'm the director of early literacy. We would love to help you with your literacy scores in your elementary school. And I'm happy to say that not many have turned me down on that. So we started that initiative last year by placing the schools the coaches in the schools. We have 20 partnership schools that are entering year 2. So let me tell you about why we're going back and kind of our efforts there. It is our vision to stay within that school 3 to 5 years. We knew that it was really important not to place a literacy coach within a school, try to help them very quickly, and then pull out and go to another school. So we look for our coaches to be inside schools 3 to 5 years to really build out that sustainability. I tell them all the time, we want to build capacity, not dependence. So we want to really pour into those educators, to those leaders within the school, and help them build their capacity so they can carry on that work without that coach there. So then we can take that coach and place them into another school that needs help. We have 13 new partnership schools beginning this year.
we'll place our coaches. We wanted some time with them to really get them taught about our IPGs, the tools that we use, and then we're going to place them inside those schools after fall break. But right now, very excited. They're starting to build relationships with those schools that they're going to be partnering with, and then they'll be full-time within that school in falls. Relationships are vital to the work that we do. And I'm going to give you some data here in a little bit about the actual coaches, but we spend the first few months building those relationships because we know they need to trust that we are there for them, that we are going to coach them, that we want the best for them in their school. So we really try to build those relationships at the beginning, and we want to be anchored in evidence. They need to trust us, but we also talk about how we need to be agile in our practice and nimble, because the school that you come from has very different context than the school that she comes from. So we don't want to be so rigid and hard-lined in our coaching experience that we don't, really pay tribute to the context and the students that they serve, the community they serve. So we have really put that as a forefront of our work, building that relationship. They work on coaching cycles, and that coaching cycle can be anywhere from 2 weeks long to 6 weeks long. It kind of depends on that need. But they build that relationship and that trust first. And then they work on really helping the teachers implement the high-quality instructional resource. And that's kind of what our coaching goes through, that high-quality instructional resource, and really getting that to fidelity and really using research-based, evidence-based best practices.
Can you speak a little bit? You shared with me that oftentimes when you reach out to superintendents, they'll say like, what's the catch?
Yeah, oh yeah. But most of the time, I will say, I've got this literacy coach, and they're going to be coming into your school, and you don't have to pay for them, and we have some assurances, but mainly we just need a closet that you can put that coach in to house their stuff. And I go through my spiel, and most of the time they'll say, so what's the catch? And my reply is, I promise you, superintendent, there's not a catch. There's not a catch. It's truly from a place of being able to, because of the legislation, and wanting to change literacy in the state of Kentucky, that we want to give you this coach. So, and they have been so grateful and so wonderful to work with, and welcome that coach and that director inside their schools and communities with open arms. Absolutely.
Were there any districts that said no to a second year?
No, not to a second year now.
Okay.
No, and that's a great point too. So we were invited back, so hopefully we're doing some good things within that school.
We have had a few districts who said no initially, but those tend to be in a state of transition or change.
Yeah.
And so I anticipate that we hope that in the future they would be willing to work with us, but we respect the fact that sometimes it may not be the exact right time for that.
And Christy, is the coaching model Ignite? Is it cognitive coaching?
It's a mixture of both,
Oh, okay.
of all, really. So we're going through cognitive coaching training currently, but we've kind of developed a mixture of different approaches. And our partner, TNTP, who did Opportunity Network and all of that, has helped us develop kind of our own coaching model that fits Kentucky's context and our needs. But it is all based off of the instructional practice guides that we have that truly sets the vision for good literacy instruction. So we base kind of our coaching conversations and feedback based on that instructional practice guide.
Just a reflection, I've been thinking about a lot this summer because several of my students are looking at coaching models, and many of them become instructional coaches. I think we do a much better job in Kentucky preparing people to be coaches. I'm wondering, as you guys move forward, thinking about a research agenda around how are we preparing people to be coached? Sometimes people liken it to the difference between being a high school basketball coach and a professional basketball coach, because there's a different level of need in terms of the coachee, if I can use that word. So anyway, an interesting angle to think about. There's a little bit of research about that, but not a lot. It usually focuses on the delivery, but not on the reception of the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. And one thing that I always say, we had a literacy leadership launch this year. we brought all of the principals and district admin into one place that we had a literacy coach partner with them. Because they need to know the information up front, the tools that we use, they need to be on board with what we're doing inside their schools. And one of the mantras that carried us throughout that day is everybody deserves a coach. And a lot of times,
It's a different mental model.
it is, because, you know, I spent the majority of my career as an administrator. So I was a teacher for a short amount of time, went into administration, assistant principal, a district chief academic officer. And a lot of times, principals and district personnel don't think about themselves needing that coach, but we all need a coach. I need a coach as the director of early literacy, and Mickey often coaches me and is my thought partner, but we all deserve a coach. You're exactly right.
Thank you.
Is Letters HQIR, or are there other resources you use in addition to Letters?
So Letters is professional learning, so it's curriculum agnostic. But we've seen, Dr. Todd, and we'll be able to speak to this a little bit later, when folks have gone through Letters and they do have an aligned instructional resource, they implement at a higher rate because they understand the science behind it and why it's structured in a particular way.
So on the next slide, just to kind of talk about some further data about our coaching model. Again, I said that, you know, we spent a large majority of the first semester building those relationships before we ever did any classroom observations. Because if they don't trust us and we don't have that relationship with them, giving them feedback doesn't land very well most of the time. So next year, I expect those numbers to be even greater because this is based on 23 coaches. Next year will be based on 33 coaches. So again, we spend the majority of our time doing classroom observations and then giving them feedback. And this was not in a formal coaching situation or cycle, but more about feedback about the HQIR or maybe some evidence-based practices that we could use to tweak their lessons within the HQIR. And then we were able to execute over 250 different coaching cycles within those partnership schools that we had. So very proud of our team for doing that. They also focus on professional learning communities. So inside those schools, those partnership schools, they are able to lead PLCs, and most of those PLCs that they lead are based on internalization. So when I was a teacher, and I won't tell you how many years ago, but when I was in the classroom, I had to sit and write out my lesson plan every day and turn that into my principal. I was a reading teacher, fourth and fifth grade reading teacher. Now, that curriculum, the HQIR, sets up Teachers for Success. It already has the lesson plan there, but you really can't be successful just standing in front and reading that verbatim. Teachers need to internalize that lesson, think about what misconceptions are my kids going to have when I give them this information, or what could I do to engage the students within this lesson. So that's what internalization is. And we really try to lead their PLCs, the teachers, through that internalization, which is, their lesson plan, their game plan for delivering that lesson. And then we do walkthroughs as well as a coaching team. And a lot of times we bring on the school administrators and the district leaders through those walkthroughs. And we've had over 300 of those too.
So on the next slide, it's going to give just a snapshot of the HQIR implementation integrity. And, I do want to say we see HQIR as part of our theory of action because we know that if it's implemented, students are getting access to grade level learning. In the absence of that, there are some teachers who can design a pattern of lessons and units that are aligned to standards and do meet grade level learning. But not every teacher is equipped to do that consistently. And so the HQIR provides the foundation for that. So you can see there over the course of that school year, coaches influence HQIR implementation and integrity with over 60% of lessons demonstrating that upper bucket integrity by the end of the school year. And you can see the growth that happened over the year. And again, it's not about being so rigid that everyone is speaking in the exact same way, but it is ensuring that regardless of that child's teacher, that all students are having access to grade level learning and that they are progressing toward proficiency in reading based on the instruction that's given across classrooms. On the next slide, you'll see, and I thought this was really powerful, over 85% of observed lessons had a grade-appropriate text at the center by the end of the year, and that was up from 57% in September. And that grade-appropriate text is central for those students to be able to progress in reading on grade level, to progress toward proficiency. And even if they are needing additional supports, they have to be exposed to grade level text. If that doesn't happen, then there is no way for them to be able to make up the gap, and they will continue to be reading off level.
On the next slide, we delve into letters just a little bit more. So letters has been kind of the gold standard for professional learning within Kentucky, and thrilled that we have, up until this point, have had over 6,000 volunteers take this professional learning. Now, I know we talked about it before, but I do want to reiterate that this is not an easy lift. On teachers, it's a 2-year professional learning PL, design PL. So, it's not something that they can quickly learn and go on, because they have to start with the science behind how the brain learns to read. And that component is essential to really understanding why students struggle in the classroom, and for our teachers to be able to navigate that and help their students learn to read. So through cohorts 1, 2, and 3, we've had over 5,300 letters for educators, participants, over 900 letters for administrators. But one thing that I'm really proud of is they have to take a pre-assessment in letters for educators before they even start the PL. And that pre-assessment, around 65% was the average for that assessment. When they completed the 2 years of letters, they take a post-assessment, and that average score on that test is 95%. So that is huge growth within the between the pre-assessment and the post-assessment for our teachers and their learning. And again, that's over 2 years of learning that they're taking in and digesting. We do have a cohort 4 open, and it's going to close August the 22nd, so we've been heavily advertising that. When I created this PowerPoint, we had 800 registrants. At this point, we have 900 registrants, and I really expect that to hit over 1,000 before we close registration at the end of this month. But that tells me, with almost 1,000 coming on board for a 4th cohort of letters, that educators truly do have an appetite for this learning and need this learning. So, and we are going to offer that as long as we can, as much as we can in future cohorts. We do have plans for cohort 5 and cohort 6 coming up, so excited about that.
So on the next slide, I want to speak a little bit to some of the findings from our third-party evaluation. If you look at the slide and the bulleted points, so these are findings across all cohorts. So it was cohort 1, 2, and 3. Educators report increased confidence in literacy knowledge and comfort in implementing instructional strategies as a result of participating in the Kentucky Reading Academy's Letters Professional Learning. They also reported increased application of the strategies across all 3 tiers of instruction for students. And that matters very much to us because those students that are needing to make accelerated progress toward proficiency, they deserve access to those strategies as well, the things that are also happening in Tier 1 for all students. And then the last bullet there, participants experienced increased motivation to implement their district-approved HQIR as a result of understanding the why and the science and the rationale for not only evidence-based reading instruction, but for how their resource connects to that learning. And what's not on here, I'm so excited to report, and I was able, Dr. Fletcher sort of queued me up yesterday to speak to this a little bit, but so after year 1, we are now at the end of year 2 of this evaluation, and so we can finally speak a little bit about student progress. So both teachers and administrators are reporting gains on grade level proficiency based on their universal screening data. They are seeing improved reading and writing outcomes across all tiers. But based on 23-24 data, we are seeing positive, statistically significant growth among students who were taught by letters-trained teachers. So at grade 5 specifically, so grade 5 students who had letters-trained teachers in 2 consecutive years scored higher on KSA grade 5 reading assessment than those who did not have a letters-trained teacher or just a teacher that had completed, or just 1 year. So there is something about having the coherence across teachers and time that is impacting student performance. Another thing I want to mention, so that trend persisted among students receiving special education services, with students in grade 4 and grade 5 who had 2 consecutive years of letters-trained teachers. And that was statistically significant in terms of their outcomes beyond students who, again, did not have letters-trained teachers or who did not have the 2 years in a row. So I thought that was really powerful, and are thankful to see that now we are seeing a direct impact on student outcomes.
We've already talked about this once today, and thank you so much for your kind words, Dr. Blakeward. But the Kentucky Reach to Succeed Summer Conference, I do want to say that we continue to think about how we can build that out and impact more. So she's already delivered all the information there, but the sessions that we offered, one of the bright spots for me that day is we kept having administrators and teachers come up to the registration booth, and they would say, I'm having a really hard time picking between these 3 sessions. This is where I'm at. That's a great problem to have. So they kept coming up and saying, this is where I'm at, this is what I know, in terms of HQIR, which one would you point me in the direction to? So that told me that the offerings that we had at the conference were relevant, were worthwhile. So we want to continue to build that out, to really build community and knowledge around evidence-based best practices and build that bigger and better. We already know that it's going to be at the Galt House next year, and we already have some of our keynote ideas and information, so excited about planning that out for next year.
So the next slide is dealing with our Kentucky Early Literacy Leadership Network, and this is something that it truly makes my heart swell. It is such a privilege. It is such a privilege to be able to work with district level teams around this work, and to not only support them, but to encourage them on the many things that they're doing. I mean, this is hard work. And it can be messy. And so in many ways, it's good, frankly, just to be able to love on people a little bit, and to thank them for the good work that they're doing, but then also find ways to identify the specific needs that they have that the network can help to support in. And so, as Christy already mentioned, we do have 33 districts who are a part of Cohort 1. We have asked all of those folks to return in a second year. We will hear back on August the 16th, or by August the 16th, on whether or not they want to continue on. And our hope and belief is that many of them will want to continue. And then we're excited to say again that we've invited 23 additional districts. So we focused on far western Kentucky, and also expanding out our eastern Kentucky partnerships. But we did include, I think, invitations to about 10 more central Kentucky locations as well. And so Christy would love to be able to support all 171 districts within the network space. But I think the really interesting thing about this is that, there are not enough hours in the day for these teams to have dedicated conversations like this. And so just giving them the space and the time to be able to think together and to reflect on their work is of great value to them. And we do have 5 to 7 per team, so there's always someone from the district level who supports curriculum and instruction. And then we focus on principals, so elementary school principals, and then they can build out the other members of that team. We have some interventionists who are there, we have some lead teachers, and so it's been such a joy to be able to get to know them, to get to know their work, and come alongside of them as part of the network. I'm a little bit biased, but I love that part of the work.
In conjunction with the Kentucky Ellen, we saw the need very quickly, not only within our partnership schools where we have a literacy coach, but the Kentucky Ellen Network, where we bring together, like she said, district and school administrators. Again, as a previous instructional, I tried to be instructionally minded as a principal, but I knew that when I stepped into that school for the day, that I might have had the best of intentions to do X, Y, and Z, but a lot of times that did not work in the way that I wanted it to. But I need all of the principals in the state of Kentucky to be empowered with the knowledge that they need in order to help support their teachers in those schools. So we saw very quickly that if the leadership was not fully aware or wasn't involved with the literacy efforts within the school, that sustainability was going to be difficult because they are the lead learners. They are the ones that have the vision, that set the charge for their teachers. So the regional principal support leaders, as we said earlier, we have 8 of those, and they're stationed within the 8 regions of the state of Kentucky. Passionate leaders themselves that want to coach and mentor principals within our Kentucky school districts. So they're starting with the Kentucky LN Network, those administrators that have joined in and helping on a voluntary basis, and they have had several that said, yes, you know, I'll come in or I want you to come into my school and help me and be my coach. But really to try to think about how to bridge the gap between theory and practice and give them the information, the tools, the knowledge they need in order to sustain the success that they're seeing in urban literacy with HQIR implementation. They are also going to work this year with our partnership schools, so leaders that want that mentor, that coach. Maybe it is, it's not simple, but what I was about to say, as simple as building out the master schedule. But if any of you have ever built out a master schedule, you know that's not simple.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes it is very difficult. Sometimes you need, as a principal, somebody that has done that on a larger scale or even a smaller scale to look at it, to be a second set of eyes and be like, you know, let's protect this tier 1 instruction here and not pull kids out here. You know, and this is the way we can do that. So things like that, building out systems and structures within the school to help support instruction, literacy instruction. So very excited about the work of the regional principal support leaders. Again, they're just passionate about giving principals the information, knowledge, and tools they need in order to be successful. And that, as a former principal, makes my heart happy that we're able to do that.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I have felt all along that it's very important to have folks who are in positions of leadership that have lived experience and can say, like, I have legitimately been in your shoes. And so that, to me, the principals that we have as a part of this team have rich experience in the role, and they have seen many successes, but they've also worked through numerous challenges. And so I think that, you know, part of this work is truly about building relationship, and now they can come alongside of someone else who has shared and lived experience with them. And so I think that's very powerful, and I think that's why when Christy reaches out to districts, there's more and more trust and there's more and more credibility that the team has because of their expertise, but also the belief and the knowledge that we are here to support you. This is not a gotcha. This is how can we help? How can we be of service to your system?
I'll just say that my team has street cred.
Yes.
They have some street cred when it comes to, they have lived experience within the classroom and as administrators, so they're able to talk that talk and share those experiences.
On the next slide, I just wanted to briefly mention, so you know, our main work under the teacher academies is connected to letters. This is just a secondary science of reading option, and it is nowhere scaled out to where we want it to be. Right now, we've had about 760 middle and or high school teachers take a much abbreviated science of reading course. And we're hoping in this next year to be able to expand that even further. But it's not at the same level as letters, but we are working toward that. And our last slide is just reflections, and we may do that time.
I think we are at times, but we needed to hear all of the, I mean, we put so much energy and money and effort into this work. We need to hear what's going on. And it sounds like we are getting a lot of bang for our buck. So
Return on investment.
congratulations to you all and to us. And to Kentucky and okay, go ahead.
Is there any kind of training for volunteers or parents so we can be doing the same things
So that is an excellent question. We don't have online professional learning now, but with our new PLMS, the Kentucky Learning Hub, I am very hopeful that we can start engaging in some coursework that would benefit parents, families, community members. Is there anything?
We're also this year offering our first round of partnership schools, a resource called Palumba. Not to be, that's not the drink that you're thinking about. It's a resource that, because I say that and people always give me this weird look, but it is a wonderful app that parents can use at home that helps them teach their kids. It's phonemic awareness, phonics, but decoding words. We're really excited about that launch and pilot to see if that really helps give them the resources they need.
Thank you. So we need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
And second,
Second?
and all in favor?
I
All right.
And I'm sorry we didn't give them time for questions.